And our goal is by the end of 2026, we will have everyone in the organization certified to be able to do no code, low code programming of AI agents themselves so that they don't have to go through IT to have that happen.
Don't conduct your analysis in isolation because data is so incredibly powerful.
Not defending just the tribe, but defending the organization.
Those creative people that you really want to keep empowered, keep excited, keep motivated, keep thinking.
A good experience pays dividends down the line.
Stereotypes tend to break down in proximity.
Welcome to We're Only Human, a podcast about human resources, business, technology, and the workplace. My name is Ben Eubanks, your host, and I'm so glad you're here. Hey everyone, Ben Eubanks here, host of We're Only Human. I'm really excited to be with Robin Barbacane. She is the Chief Talent Development Officer at Rackspace, and we're going to talk about one of my favorite topics, which is AI. We're going to talk about how that matters in a world where we are people professionals and thinking about how to support, serve, and enable our people to do their best work every day. Robin, glad you're here. Welcome.
Thank you. I'm really excited to be here today. I love talking about this stuff.
I cannot wait. It's going to be a blast. Before we get into some of the good things about what Rackspace is doing to support in this area, talk a little more about who you are and what you do, please.
Sure. Yeah. So again, thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to have this conversation with you. So I am the head of talent development for Rackspace. I'm responsible for leading our organization through transformation, and I'm really focused on how we grow our people, how we develop our leaders, and the ways that we work. But I'm not the typical talent development executive. I have, of course, responsibility for creating the strategy and the programs and the initiatives to execute on the mission and vision. I also have responsibility for internal communications and sales enablement under my umbrella. But as you may imagine, a big part of my role in workforce transformation in the last couple of years is the ways that we're adopting and embedding AI, right? So our focus has really been and continues to be giving our people who we call rackers, we call our employees rackers, the skills and confidence to use AI in their day-to-day jobs without them like breaking into a cold sweat, right? When they hear that we're an AI first company. My focus has been on teaching everyone how to work with AI. And because of our approach in the way that we're teaching them to work smarter and more strategically and with specific intention when it comes to AI, we found that once that started to click, our organization really started moving at a completely different level and in the same direction together.
One of the things you put together there is you talked about for the rackers, you're like, we give them the skills and the confidence. You said both those things. And a lot of people, when we talk about talent, we talk about growing our people, we think about the skills piece. We don't always think about the confidence aspect of that, about they're able to actually go and do that thing. It's, oh, nope, dust my hands off. I've taught Robin this key critical idea. Hopefully she can figure out how to actually make that work. Hopefully she can actually put it in practice. Where do you think that break point is between like giving them a skill and then getting to the actual confidence piece there? Because as you're doing this with your team, you're seeing them probably start to show some of those behaviors where, okay, I can tell that Paul over there is confident in this because he's doing this thing, or I can see that Susie over there is confident because I see this outcome or output. What do you think it takes to get from just a skill to that confidence, if that makes sense?
Yeah, it makes total sense. So in my opinion, I believe that most adults in particular are hands-on learners, right? So when we get into the HR, esoteric, abstract thought concepts, you lose the whole room. You see their eyes glaze over, right? So what we did is more of a workshop format. We certainly started with education, but what our intention with education was to get to literacy. And when we started this conversation in 2023, very early on, back then it was, and still even today, it was the fear factor of robots were going to take over the world and steal our jobs and eat our brains and and we were like, yeah, no, that's not going to happen. So we started to talk with them about what AI is, what it isn't. We even started to talk with them about, hey, do you use Alexa and Siri and Netflix? And what about Waze? And hey, guess what? Like, that's AI. And they're like, oh, Alexa's not really that smart. I get in fights with Alexa every morning. My husband's like, you're fighting with Alexa again. I'm like, because I asked her what the weather was and she told me, do I want to listen to Taylor Swift? I was like, no, what on earth? So when we started having conversations like that and really almost dumbing it down, people were like, oh, Alexa can't take my job. No, but she makes your life easier. When I'm in a hotel room and I want to know what time it is and I start saying, hey, Alexa, what time it is? I'm like, oh, I'm in a hotel room. I forgot. So it was that kind of hands-on jump in, figure out what it is, open up your laptop and let us show you how to use it.
Okay. For me, when you said there, you said this is rooted in education, but I translate in my head, your target as you're talking about this as action. It's not just educating, but the end result has to be doing something with this. Otherwise, it's why teach you about it if we're not going to expect you to actually put your hands on it or put your brain to it and actually start using that. So that for me was the key transition point, it felt like for y'all. So, all right. Talk about some of the results that you and the team have seen. So we talked about this development run, so the prep for some of the things that you've been doing here. And then you've gotten to this point now where you've had some incredible results with AI adoption at Rackspace. Talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, so again, kudos to my CHRO, even before I started, right? She jumped in right away. And what I love about working with her, we're very like-minded. If you look at the successes I think that both she and I have had in HR and throughout our career, it was exactly what you were talking about, that hands-on, get in there, do it type of stuff. Have our leaders come out with an action plan that as soon as you leave our physical office back in the day or now virtual office, you can just run with it. We applied that same methodology here. And what we did was we gave the teams that we brought together in HR very specific business problems to work on and think about. Right. So we came together and what we used is this, IT people will cringe when I say this, but I called it a hackathon approach, right? It wasn't an actual hackathon in IT world, but it was conceptually the same, right? Let's throw a problem out there, everybody get in there, figure out some ideas, and then let's come out of that with some solutions that we have from that. I applied talent management concepts to it. I actually took a group first through becoming Lean Six Sigma certified. I have a master black belt in our HR operations organization who partnered with me along with, I have responsibility for the Rackspace Corporate University, right? So he's in HR operations. I've got the university. I had my thinking and my CHRO's direction and guidance. We looked at what are we trying to achieve? What specific business problems are we trying to solve for? What do we think AI could do? And what our IT executives at the time started to do was talk about AI as a coworker. So if we came to you and we said, Ben, you get to hire 3 people on your team right now, what would they do? You started to figure out, oh, okay, let's create a job description for that coworker. Let's create a persona for that coworker. We've even named our AI coworker. So if I'm on your team, Ben, and I play a certain role, you know what to come to me for and what solutions I can provide for you. Then the organization, again, we simplified it. We dumbed it down. They're like, oh, I get that. Now I know what she can do and why I should use that coworker.
This hackathon approach, it all came back to a business problem or a challenge you were trying to solve for. Do you have any examples of what those could be, like one of those, just to give us an idea?
Yeah, I mean, we actually have 6 coworkers right now in HR, and we have other coworkers within the organization. So one of our first coworkers that we had, there was a help desk that we had that was called Ask HR. It's still called Ask HR. And Ask HR would get hundreds of questions, and so would our HR business partners on what's my vacation? How do I apply for maternity leave? What are benefits in one of 26 countries that we operate in? So that was one of the business problems that we threw out first. How can we get an AI assistant to start to handle most of those requests? At this point today, it's handling more than 90% of those requests at 86% accuracy right now. So in order for anything to go above that, where it gets into tier 2 or tier 3 level, where you have to get a human being involved, it needs to be a pretty complicated question. And it freed up all these resources that are super talented, super smart resources that were sitting on the Ask HR desk to do other things for us. And of course, the HR business partners aren't bogged down and burdened with all those types of mundane, routine requests that come through.
Thinking back, when I first heard anyone do anything like this, it was not even in the HR bubble. It was a university. They had this forum for students, and they said there was, I can't remember the name of the bot. I want to call it Robin. Like it wasn't Robin, but the bots in there like answering questions. We were like, wow, that person answered my question at 2 a.m. That was really fast. And eventually they catch on, hold on, is that a real person or is that? And they came out, no, this is actually a bot we're testing out, an agent we're testing out. But all that mattered to the person was I got a quick answer. It was accurate. It was timely, like all those things that really matter to them in the moment. They don't care if it's someone on the HR team, a person that's typing that out, if it's the quick answer they need to their specific problem, that's all that really matters. And I imagine that frees up your people to start doing other things potentially with their time if they're not having to be answering that for the 47th time. Here's how you change your deferral on your
That
401k.
you're like, here's how you get your pay. Yeah. So that's exactly it. And what's really important to us at Rackspace is very simply fanatical experience to our clients, fanatical experience to our rackers. So the racker experience is important. And if you think about, let's look at that coworker notion, right? So the coworker, we train the coworker. At first, we talk to the coworker as an intern, right? Like the way that you would with as an intern, very specific, prescriptive, do exactly this, right? Then the AI can learn as any other human being would learn, right? As it starts to get smarter and grow, now we don't have to give it quite as much instruction. But we also do jokingly performance reviews. We check it, we measure it, we look at the accuracy, we look at the experience from a racker perspective. We talk to rackers and ask them what they think about it. Has it been perfect? Nope. Did it answer questions wrong? I can have a whole blooper reel of all those types of things. But we learned, we failed fast, we continued to build from it. And it's really been a very interesting experience and a very successful one. And then, like I said, we've got just within HR, 4 or 5 others that we've either built or bought, and we're building one right now to be able to forecast and do some predictive analytics, so getting into higher level thinking within AI.
So I'm going to ask you a question that you may not have an answer to, but as someone who thinks about development, thinks about how people learn, all those sorts of inner workings of our brains, you may have an interesting perspective on this. But why do you think when a company is trying to think about going down this path like Rackspace has, and they're like, well, we can't risk it answering a question incorrectly, when yesterday that HR business partner on the team answered a question incorrectly because they misunderstood how that policy worked? People make the same mistakes occasionally, right? Why are we unwilling to allow an AI tool to do that? It's because they don't do the performance reviews. Let's give feedback, make it better. I don't know the answer to that, but any thoughts?
No, but I love that. So yes, I shouldn't say. I have tons of thoughts, and I love that question. I don't know. I think maybe it's the fear factor. It's probably human nature, right? But what we have to understand is this is artificial intelligence. It grows, it becomes smarter. It's garbage in, garbage out. Whatever data you put into it, it can be as smart as that data that comes into it. So you have to understand you need to train it. You need to learn how to work with it, right? When you hire a brand new employee, they don't have all the answers. And to your point, humans make mistakes as well. Allow that space for mistakes to happen. And there's a million books that we can quote, right? Learning from failure. Like you can't get into innovation unless you have failure. My son's a hockey player, and I remember when he started at 8 or 9 years old, he wanted to be like Ivan Provorov, and we were like, yeah, no, you can't skate, bud. Like you have to like crawl before you walk. Like it's that human nature conversation that you need to have. And what we did is we really quickly identified who our change agents were and who our early adopters were. And we also identified who our detractors were. We didn't work with the detractors. They were smarter, better than us. They knew better. We could never do this. And we were like, yep, you're right. Let us just experiment over here. And that's why we went within HR first. Because as we closed the circle down more and more, we were like, we can do it for ourselves. And we did. And all of a sudden, we did all these amazing things. And the organization looked at us like, hey, wait a minute, what's going on over there? And then we have this whole playbook and methodology of how to go about doing it.
For so many people listening to that statement from you right now, they're in a position where they're the opposite. They're seen as the laggards in the organization, the last ones to make a change, the last ones to be invited to a conversation around strategy. And I love that you've positioned this the other way completely, saying, why not take the lead? Why not show off what you can do? Why not show off the capability within this function? Because that's going to set you up for bigger and better things down the line versus being fearful, being worried, being concerned, being slow to react, those sorts of things. So I love that picture that you're painting there.
Yeah. Like I said, that's why I said I'm not the typical HR person, and I love that my
Yes.
CHRO isn't either. I would refer to her as an amazing, talented business executive who happens to be an HR executive. And what's interesting about that is you have this unique superpower because where all the dead bodies are buried in the organization. You have this like perspective of totally different things that other executives in the organization don't have. So if you understand the business, you focus on what specifically is the organization trying to achieve, and then you get the entire workforce to move in that direction and achieve only those things that are essentially revenue producing activities, what better results do you then have? And that was her approach. And that's where we've gone and why she identified very early on, this is a people play. This is not necessarily a tech play.
So you talked to me a minute ago about the fanatical experience is one of the priorities for the environment you're trying to create for and the culture you're trying to create for the Rackers and even for clients down the line. Talk about, if you don't mind, a little more about what this makes possible. Like I said earlier, you're freeing up time. That's what we see in the research that's starting to come out is it's not just the freed up time that's the benefit, but it's that white space where your team can now be more supportive, be more engaged. You mentioned like those higher level tasks where it's a very complex ask from someone that's not a quick yes or no answer. Yes, they can spend more time on that because they're not bogged down with all the other requests. As an example, that's one of the early ways to do that. And you can really be there for someone in a tough time or in a situation where they need more hand holding and support. But what other sorts of ways are you seeing the team use that white space created by this new efficiency to create new value for the Rackers?
It's interesting. So I talk with you about the coworkers that we have
Yeah.
already. I talk with you about the one example of Ask HR. Just quickly, some of the other coworkers that we have, I think would be good to talk about so I can set the context for that
Okay.
answer to that question. Because while this is really exciting work that we've done and I'm really proud of it, only 2 years ago when we started this journey, it's frankly like yesterday's news, right? Old news. Like we're in a completely different space now in the way that we're approaching AI. So we have Ask HR, which is an HR virtual assistant. We have a recruiting assistant that we bought. We have an employment advisor that we bought, and we go through a build versus buy strategy, right? To figure out, is it cheaper for us to buy it and there's a better impact, or could we just build it internally? So the reason that we bought those two things, for example, the employment advisor that we use, we operate in 26 different countries. You can imagine all the different employment laws in all those different countries. Typically, you would have to have teams of external lawyers, internal lawyers, employee relations people going through all the different changes every single time anything comes up. I think of like countries like in the Netherlands, we have Netherlands Works Councils that every time we make any change, it needs to go through an employee advisory committee, much like unions are in the US, right? Where we have to negotiate with them. And every single time we make a change, we're an organization in transformation beyond AI, right?
Yes.
Imagine all the changes that are happening. Within seconds or minutes, we can get information from our employment advisor coworker with very high levels of accuracy versus days, weeks, and months. So that really helps us a lot. We have, of course, Copilot and Claude, which most organizations have, and then that sales coworker that I talked about that's doing predictive analytics for us. But where we're going now to the next level, we've created what we call an AI ambassador program. And our goal is by the end of 2026, we will have everyone in the organization certified to be able to do no code, low code programming of AI agents themselves so that they don't have to go through IT to have that happen. There will be guardrails and security guidance and ethical kind of approaches that we've put in place. But we want our rackers. We have super, super talented rackers that are way smarter than we ever could be sitting in our executive offices, coming up with solutions of how do they make their lives easier? How do they make their workload lighter? And again, if we say to them, you can hire an AI coworker, what would you do with it? Now program and teach your coworker. That frees you up to be able, it's teach a person to fish kind of mentality, right?
Yes.
At the higher levels, when you get into our AI ambassador top tier certification levels, that's where we're getting then IT is going to start to program. But we have the ability for our rackers to pitch an idea to our executive team. It goes into a sandbox environment. We test it out. We look at ourselves as customer zero for a period of time. And then if it successfully comes out of the sandbox environment, we would employ it within our organization, and it could become a commercially viable product as well. So we've pushed our AI thinking to a completely different level in the last even just couple of months.
That is so wild to me to hear. One of the things that seems to be underlying all this, again, it's you and I are both people that think about work and how it gets done and the people that do it and do they have the right skills. We think about those sorts of things. It's the language we speak. It feels like these sorts of things are forcing all of us, every individual who's exposed to this, to look at the work they're doing in a more meaningful way, a more practical way than maybe any other change that's hit the workplace in my working lifetime,
Yeah.
potentially.
I would totally agree with that. It's interesting. I've been speaking on this topic for many years externally at different conferences and stuff. And I remember one conference that I went to early on. I sat in this room with a bunch of executives, super smart people with really advanced degrees and stuff. And they were all talking about governance bodies, boards that they were building. And I was like, raised my hand, like meekishly, like, it feels like a waste of time to me. And they were like, what? Why? And I'm like, think about, I can remember back in the day, I won't tell you how long I've been working, but Facebook and LinkedIn was a new shiny object coming around. And I was in banking, a highly regulated industry. We created policies that said, do not use social media in any way, shape, or form. If you do, we will fire you. And we did. Can you imagine today if we didn't allow you to use social media? That's the same thing that's happening in most organizations. I can guarantee you right now, sitting around every boardroom, people are saying, do not use AI. Universities are telling students, do not use AI. Why? That makes no sense.
And weirdly, we expect people to be as capable as someone who is using
Correct.
those tools to be faster, to be smarter, to do their work more effectively. But in some cases, they're hamstringing them by saying that, but don't do that here. Or, hey, no candidates can use this, but once you get here, we expect you to be smart at it. You're like, oh, okay, we've got to figure out that this doesn't even seem to make sense. 2 + 2 is 47. Doesn't work.
That's right. There needs to be an ethical application for it. And that's where I think we've done a really good job at it. And our tech executives and our CEO has done a good executive to say, stay within these guardrails. These are our values as an organization. Use your brain, right? We have smart people. We've hired you for a reason. Using that same notion of leadership 101 that we've been taught for 100 years, right? Hire smarter people around you and get out of their way. That's what we've been doing.
Okay, so you've given us a really good set of ideas here. I appreciated the sort of gated process you laid out too. Something as simple as letting any crowdsourcing this. Let people pitch. You have smart people. Let's let them bring their ideas. Don't just go throw it out there and see what happens. Let's test it in a sandbox. Let's give it its time there in alpha or beta, if we're going to use that language. And then if it's working and it's saving time, it's adding value, let's put it in live and make it happen. I love that sort of approach there because again, it's action oriented. From the very beginning of our conversation, it's been a theme that you keep bringing up over and over. It's not just training for aha, but training for go and do. And that's the same sort of thing there. What other advice would you have for people that are listening in here thinking, okay, Robin, this sounds great. We'd love to do this. What other advice do you have for us to go and make that happen? Practical tips, anything like that?
So, first and foremost, in my opinion and my experience has been our CEO says, here's what I want you to think about, right? This is the problem that I want you to solve for. Or our CHRO told us, this is exactly the space that I want you to operate in so that we don't get distracted by all the shiny things. I don't know if it would be second or equally prioritized is look at your data. The very first thing you have to do is clean up your data, right? What we were able to do really successfully is be honest with ourselves. Our data sat in a billion different disparate systems. It still does sit in a bunch of, right? It's very difficult oftentimes to get to information, find out where it is, clean it up, right? Because you're going to get that garbage in, garbage out. The AI is only as good as the data that it works off of. That's how you're going to train it. I would say 100% start with education and remain curious. Never have that education journey end. AI is accelerating at a speed, you brought it up too, a speed I've never seen ever before in my career, and I've been at this for a really long time. Stay curious, stay up to date on what's going on externally, and work together and keep iterating on things. It's probably not going to be perfect when you first put it out there, but that's where I would have a governance process in place of when are you going to look at it again, give it a pilot period, give it a proof of concept period, stick with it for that period of time. Don't make changes during that period of time, and then start to iterate on it.
So you said this 3 or 4 different ways, but I'm going to have you say it outright here. Should someone expect to go back to their leadership with an ROI on day one and say, look at all the great things? Probably not, right?
No.
This is the longer term play. Yes, we're playing the long game here. All right. I love those inputs there. Again, there's the data nerd in me gets excited when you say, hey, get your data, know where it is, clean it up, because you're going to be using that to make these decisions and use it to train the algorithms and all those sorts of good things. One of the things that I didn't ask you about that I want to come back full circle. So we started out this whole conversation today with developing people, developing their skills, using that as the fundamental jump start for this whole thing. let's say that people are following your footsteps. Like we snap our fingers and we are in this age where there's more AI in it and people are relying on it. It's a teammate, all those sorts of things. What skills matter more for the humans besides just being good with AI? What skills matter more for the humans? Because I think you talked about curiosity there at the very end, teasing into that. I feel like some of those things could be opportunities there. Anything you want to share?
So I guess I'll say first, caveat it with this is specifically in a for-profit business, right? Business model. So typical corporate structure. I believe that you need to look at, are you profitable, right? Are you contributing successfully to the profitability and sustainability of the organization? So that's where I think humans can play at a much higher level. As I remember, again, back in the day, like I had 5 assistants that would book my travel and read my emails and tell me where to be. And I would walk into meetings and they would give me my PowerPoint presentation. Those are all my jobs now. So when I'm buried in trying to create PowerPoint presentations, which I'm awful at, that's a waste of my time, but I have to do that. So those are the types of things, like that's not where I should be spending my intellectual capital. And not that I don't mean to downplay the importance of somebody I have a genius little unicorn who I talk about on my team who makes these amazing PowerPoint presentations. But if we can even get her life to be easier, right? To have AI start to be able to do things in the magical way that she can, and we can shift her intelligence and creativity and talent to higher levels, we can move the organization forward, because I believe organizations in general get bogged down in the administrivia that we have to do on a regular basis.
Yeah. So know your best and highest value activities is another way you could put it probably, and then do them for goodness sake. Just go do them because
do them, right.
Yes,
we used to have secretaries, we used to have assistants, we don't have that anymore, and that's fine, but let that AI be those things for you so you can get back to being the executive at the high level that you should be.
All right. I love that. Great way to wrap it up here for us today. So if someone wants to learn more about Rackspace, the great work that the team is doing, wants to know more about you and just follow you because you're all kinds of awesome, can they do both of those things on LinkedIn or is there a website? What's the best way to do that?
Oh, I would love that. Absolutely. Connect with me on LinkedIn. I'm on LinkedIn a lot. I speak a lot. I'm out and about, so I would love to meet people as I'm out and around the country.
Yes, wonderful. Thank you again for joining us today, for sharing your passion on this, your expertise around it. I've enjoyed it so much and have some good takeaways. I know the audience does as well. Appreciate you, Robin.
Thanks, Ben. Same to you. Thanks for this platform. It's fantastic.
Absolutely. To everybody else out there, stay tuned for more good stuff next time on We're Only Human.
Thank you so much for joining me on the show today. I'm honored to have you as a listener. If you enjoyed this episode, please take 10 seconds to rate it at iTunes, Stitcher, or wherever you listen to your podcast. Also, if you know a friend that could benefit from today's conversation, please pass it their way. After all, a rising tide lifts all ships. To see show notes, sponsor information, and our full show archives, visit onlyhumanshow.com.